What's up guys, today's modern deck tech is green-white combo elves. Yeah, not green-black. There's no black cards actually in the deck. Green-white, and it's not just a devoted druid deck. Without any further ado, let's get into it. So I've been working on this brew since before Luris was banned, but once he was banned, I felt like it was the perfect opportunity to give it a try. The format was still very much shaken up. It still is, I would argue, and I took it to my local LGS. 2 times I went 3-1, which for me, especially with a combo deck, which is not normally my wheelhouse, I felt like was very good. I'm sure a better player could do much better with this deck. But without any further ado, let's actually dive into it and go through the card choices, the sideboarding, which is definitely meta specific, and of course, the combos. Because there's not just one combo in this deck. There's at least 3, probably more you could find. But first, let's just go through the full deck build. Being an elf combo deck means we are running a lot of elves, and most of them are mana producing elves because that is part of our combo to generate enough mana to then pump up our entire board and swing in for the win. Boreal Druid is a lesser known one for sure. It only taps for a colorless instead of a green, but we needed a few more 1-drops and this was the best we could do because Findhorn Elves is not included. So we're running 3 Boreal Druids. Landwar Elves is the classic we're of course running 4 of. Stoneforge Mystic is another staple. We're also running 4. For Devoted Druid, we're running 4 of. It is a combo piece and not one, but several combos in the deck for infinite mana. And of course, one of those combos is with Vizier of Remedies. This is just a 1 of in the deck as we have ways to tutor for it. Elvish Archdruid is another combo piece. It generates so much mana for us that it's very easy to go infinite with. However, it also is a Lord, which does make the smaller hits in between combat and the more grindy games a little easier, because at the end of the day, this still is an elf deck and can still overrun an opponent's board even without comboing out. Circle of Dreams Druid is a slightly worse Archdruid. It doesn't have the pump effect, but still generates just boatloads of mana. We're running 3 of in the deck. Missouri Renegade Leader is another combo piece. It's also a way to keep your elves alive with its regenerate ability. In particularly grindy games, getting this guy on the board early can mean you can keep your board more or less intact for that combo off the next turn. Umbral Mantle is the secret sauce of the deck. This is probably what I would consider our main combo because nobody expects it. No one has seen this card in 12 years. I don't know, when was Lorwyn block? It's been a while. It has an untap symbol, and for 3 mana you can untap a creature to buff it +2/+2. That means if one of our mana dorks is tapping for at least 3 mana, it can tap and untap infinite number of times to grow infinitely large. And if it is tapping for 4 or more mana, that means we are net positive on mana and can go infinite and then move this to each one of our other creatures to make them also infinitely large, and hopefully at that point swing in for the win. For that reason, we're running 4 of. Now you might be thinking tapping a creature for 3 or more mana might be a bit of a magical Christmas land. Leyline of Abundance makes that job so much easier. Having 1 or 2 of these in your starting hand can make your mana dorks just generate insane amount of value right off the gate and potentially even combo off as early as turn 2. One of the things combo decks obviously struggle with is card draw, and having some tutors to go get your key pieces is pretty essential. We're running 3 Eladrami's Call, which is arguably the other reason to be in green-white besides Vizier of Remedies. This lets us tutor for any key piece we need in our combo, and usually play at the same turn as it's only a 2 mana spell to bring that card to hand. And what elf deck would be complete without Collected Company? We're running 4 of because this card has saved my ass so many times. Being able to rebuild after a board wipe or an opponent uses all of their removal only to potentially even get another combo out on the board is really tough to top for 4 mana. The Sage Who Endures is just an amazing card. No one is going to argue that. We're running 2 of in the deck because it does help us with some of our tougher matchups. Having this against Tron, for example, was nothing short of a godsend. And yeah, honestly, I might even bump it up to 3 at some point, but for right now, 2 of seemed pretty solid. Cavernous Souls in here, obviously, for the control matchup. We're running 3 of. The color fixing isn't really super important. It's more so, of course, the unable to be countered. We're running 2 basic forests here. I had to pick my favorite Secret Lair art ever. We're actually not running any basic planes, as I haven't really seen anyone try to Blood Moon us. Usually trying to Blood Moon an elf deck doesn't make a whole lot of sense due to the amount of mana dorks we have. I could see people potentially trying to do it to keep us off of white, but they would also then have to know that we're not running plains. I'm running 2 Horizon Canopies in here largely because it's just additional card draw when we might need that extra piece. 3 Razorverge Thickets here just to help us fix our mana early on. I'm also running 2 Temple Gardens, and you might be thinking this is a lot of white mana fixing, but once we get into sideboard, you'll see I'm actually running a few intensive white cards in our sideboard against some of our worst matchups. So these lands, while they don't necessarily make sense game 1, do help us out considerably with post board. And just to help us with that as well, we're running 3 Windswept Heaths. And as a one of fun of, we have a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth just to help us tilt that needle back towards more green. Now for the fun stuff, the combos. There are essentially 3 main combos in the deck, but there are corner cases where you could find other ways to go infinite, especially with more than one Leyline of Abundance on the field. Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies is a well-known combo for a reason. With just these 2 cards, you can go infinite in mana, and as long as you have a way to pump up all of your creatures, you can swing in for a win very easily. Combo 2 is also super straightforward. As long as you have a way to tap one of your mana dorks for at least 3, preferably 4 mana, you can go infinite tapping and untapping it with Umbra Mantle. That means your creature will grow infinitely large due to Umbra Mantle's ability, and as long as you're tapping for more than 3 mana, which is the untap cost, you will also generate infinite mana, allowing you to move your Umbra Mantle around to all of your creatures, do the same untap pump effect, and eventually have just an unstoppable army of elves. And last but not least, this is a lesser known Devoted Druid combo, but is still very relevant in the deck. As long as you have a Leyline of Abundance out and at least 1 extra green mana to kick off this combo, you can tap and untap Devoted Druid enough times to activate Azuri's activated ability to essentially create an infinite loop where every creature except for Devoted Druid is going to get Azuri's buff with Trample. That means as long as you have Devoted Druid and Azuri out and they both don't have Summoning Sickness, Azuri can swing in for the win. But what about sideboards? Well, here's what I've got for my current local meta. It's pretty diverse. It does have a lot of honestly top tier meta decks. And let's just kick it off with a one of Path of Exile. This is mainly because we don't have a lot of creature removal in the deck. We have plenty of ways to get rid of enchantments and artifacts and even lands, but say a Sarah's Emissary could be a real problem for us and has been in the past, so that's why this is included. Control matchups are always rough against combo decks, even when they're as resilient as ours, so being able to have a way to deal with our key pieces getting countered was pretty essential. I'm running 3 Veil of Summers for that specific reason. And speaking of removal protection, the deck is running 2 Heroic Interventions. These are usually good cards against board wipes and sometimes removal heavy decks, although I'm considering swapping them out for Mark of Asylum. Mark of Asylum is a better matchup for Fury, which I think is a more relevant card in the current meta than board wipes, and also just hoses burn matchups. For those decks running lots of Graveyard Hate, we're running 3 Endurances, which is kind of nice because we can also hit them off of Collected Company. Also running 3 Force of Vigors for both Enchantress and Artifact decks. I've actually considered going up to 4 Force of Vigors because there are just so many Artifact decks in my meta, but for right now, 3 seems to be a pretty solid number. And last but not least, I'm running 3 Leylines of Sanctity. Burn and especially Rakdos Rock are very prevalent in my meta, so having these in the sideboard just makes a lot of sense. And also is one of the main reasons why we're running extra white, just in case I don't get one of these in my hand. As I mentioned before, I've been testing the deck for a while. There are a lot of cards that I've played around with, cards that I want to try out, and cards that I did and just didn't work. Let's go over those now. First up, let's cover the most fun addition to the deck, one that I actually was running for quite a while and eventually removed due to its companion restrictions and not being able to play the Devoted Druid and Vizier combo, but maybe at some point I'll go back to it, and that is Zirda the Dawnwaker. Zirda is just a card that is waiting to be broken, and while this deck doesn't quite do it, Zirda certainly helps a lot more than she hurts. This card makes all of our activated abilities cheaper, but has the companion restriction that all of our permanents must have an activated ability. I think I might bring this build back at some point because it's just a lot of fun. Zirda rarely actually got down on the battlefield and was only really during the really grindy games, but having a companion in your deck that can potentially help you combo off late game after most of your pieces have been destroyed is kind of good. Next up is Realm Walker. Realm Walker is a great way to build back card advantage after board wipes or heavy removal. One of the reasons I actually removed Zirda initially was to add in some Realm Walkers as well. I ended up opting for those Eladrami's tutor cards instead, as I found that to be more consistent. But Realm Walker is a great card, especially in a deck that is running fetch lands, as you're able to shuffle your deck to see your top card and hopefully get another creature out. I might go back to adding this guy in, but for right now, I felt like the card advantage part of the deck was pretty solid, so I ended up cutting him. And speaking of tutors, I looked at several before settling on Eladrami's Call. The main two were Finale of Devastation and Chord of Calling, both pretty solid cards. However, when I was looking at the total mana cost of fetching the creature and then casting it, Eladrami's Call just made a lot more sense, as it was oftentimes much cheaper, especially since all of our creatures only cost 3 mana anyways. And the last tutor I looked at was Stoneforge Mystic. I actually had this in the deck at some point as a 2-of, and it just didn't quite feel right. It was more likely that we were going to draw our equipment when we needed it than drawing this and have it be essentially a dead card. I think it's a great card, especially in obviously a Hammer Time decks, but in this deck it didn't make a whole lot of sense, so I ended up cutting it to just have more elves because that makes a lot more sense. And last but not least, there's one card that I'm actually looking to try out in the deck, and that is Vivien, Champion of the Wilds. Yes, a planeswalker in an elf deck. This card makes a lot of sense in the fact that we can play our creatures at flash speed, so we could potentially get our key combo pieces or mana dorks down in our opponent's end step and have the best possible chance to actually untap with them. It also generates great card advantage, and that card advantage doesn't go away if the planeswalker dies, so we'll always have access to that creature card that's been exiled, which is super cool. I think this might be a perfect card, especially if we go back to the Zirda build, which I am strongly considering. Alright guys, I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. The full deck list is in the video description below. If you're going to build this deck, let me know in the comments below, especially if you have any edits you'd love to suggest for it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm still going to do my EDH deck brews, but competitive formats are back. Yay. And I've really been enjoying brewing and playing competitive formats. I really want to give Pioneer a try. I didn't get a chance before the shutdown, and Modern has just been getting more and more popular, and I know there's some crazy stuff we can do there. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.